Spartan-IVs are currently the newest generation of Spartans within the UNSC. They feature advancements in technology, augmentations, training, armour and methodologies that either weren't available for previous versions of Spartans or were still in the early stages of development process. Rightfully, we should be viewing the Spartan-IVs as the most well-adjusted, powerful and atypical Spartans so far, yet we get this.
Just Fire Team Majestic doing a little community outreach, man.
That's right.
And this.
Fire! Get back to cover!
And this.
I thought you'd be taller.
So why are the Forge so poorly received? Why do they have such an abysmal reputation amongst the larger fanbase? And why are they such underachievers? Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. This is Lore and Theory, and today we're taking a long, hard look at the Spartan-IVs to figure out why they have the reputation they do. Why some consider them to be the worst iteration of Spartan, and thus don't deserve the name, while others see them as what Spartans are meant to be. So let's do this. It's very obvious from what we see here that Spartan-IVs are capable of immense levels of physical and battle prowess. Here we see Spartan Jamerson Locke in his Gen 2 Mjolnir armour performing physical feats of superhuman capability. This is not isolated to Locke. The introduction to Halo 5 features Fireteam Osiris performing similar levels of battle prowess, taking out target after target without breaking stride, and using their armour to its peak capability. In reality, these feats are also not isolated to just the Spartan-IVs, and if Buck's personal opinion of the difference in classes of Spartans could be taken at face value, the Spartan-IIs and IIIs would likely be significantly more powerful and capable than we see in these clips. The Fords wear Mjolnir Gen 2, which is a new, powerful but lighter and more adaptable platform, and also boasts a variety of armour upgrades and abilities that were not available for the earlier classes wearing the Gen 1 platform. This grants the Fords an increased power to weight ratio, and features for strategic use on the fly far beyond what the 2s and 3s had during the height of the Human Covenant War. To be a Spartan-IV, you had to already be highly distinguished in other areas of military service, and you had to volunteer for the role. This circumnavigates many of the mental and psychological concerns that surrounded the means by which the 2s and 3s were conscripted into military service. The 2s were abducted as 5 to 6 year olds and immediately pushed into high-intensity military training with added focus on indoctrination and unquestioning loyalty to the UNSC, all of which could, would, and did have an adverse effect on the 2's state of mind as they grew older, although some would openly exhibit these problems while others have maintained their operational effectiveness with little more than an air of alienation between themselves and the UNSC and humanity at large. The 3s were conscripted as 4, 5 and 6 year olds who were orphans of the Human Covenant War, had likely witnessed untold horrors of the Covenant's onslaught, perhaps even the death of their mothers, fathers and their families firsthand, and then were similarly pushed into high intensity military training, again having an adverse effect on their state of mind. Adding to this, for Gamma Company in particular, a cocktail of additional augmentations that granted them the ability to keep fighting long past where systemic shock would have had lethal effect, but with the side effect of causing long-term psychological instabilities that required periodic administration of a drug called smoothers to help keep the psychotic episodes in check. Spartan-IVs are completely normal human beings, with tolerable reason anyway, and chose to enlist as normal soldiers in the UNSC before they were approved for service as a Spartan-IV. Their training was more fleshed out and established, with innovations and focused training gleaned from the earlier classes. Their augmentation sets, while not quite as raw and powerful as the earlier classes, were more refined, honed, and covered a larger range of the Spartan's physiology, leading these augmentations to be overall much broader of an effect than the earlier classes. The Mjolnir Gen 2 suits were developed off of the immense innovations made by the Mjolnir Gen 1 suits, fielded by the Spartan 2s and 3s, where the Gen 1's fluidic design methodology and constant iterative innovations development lifecycle meant that unprecedented levels of information and systems could be developed, processed, fielded, tested and iterated upon in an extraordinarily small space of time. This gave rise to the Gen 2 platform, which featured a single base concept, with the vast majority of these innovations fielded within specific armour components and sets that were independent of the Gen 2's base foundational systems, allowing it to be upgraded and tailored to mission-specific parameters with extreme ease of application. All of these parameters, all of these variables, point towards Spartan-IVs being the best and most well-equipped generation of Spartans we have ever seen, and thus the most successful, capable and accomplished. The Spartan-IVs should be the atypical Spartans. They should be honourable, highly trained, disciplined, focused. The best of the best.
Captain Lasky asked for the best.
And yet...
But as a whole, this isn't what we see.
Oh yeah, give it a rest. We all know you were on the other side of town when they caught that hinge head.
Yeah? And where were you, DeMarco?
Well, Madsen and me? We were just making sure the ladies of Rio de Janeiro felt safe and secure.
That's right. Just Fire Team Majestic doing a little community outreach, man.
That's right.
Instead, we see fraternizing while it seems they should have been at their post. We should be seeing battlefield tactics being used from drilling high-intensity training over and over again.
Get back to cover!
Instead, we see them getting overconfident, breaking formations and having to be saved by their fire team. We should be seeing respect, honour and distinction.
Seal her up! I thought you'd be taller.
Instead, we get condescension, sarcasm and disrespect. We should be seeing focused, disciplined soldiers leading by example.
No! What the hell are you guys doing here?
Captain Lasky sent us to rescue Dr. Halsey.
Instead, we get commanding officers having hissy fits and losing their cool in front of their subordinates. We should be seeing professional conduct.
Oh.
Nice. Watch this.
You guys are getting all the cool stuff.
Instead, we get Spartans making themselves vulnerable in the field in hostile territory while they play with alien artifacts they have no idea about that could blow up in their faces at a moment's notice. What's worse is that the Spartan-IVs are presented to us in-game as being incapable soldiers.
Psychological and physiological.
Psychological. So you don't think we're capable of being Spartans?
Perhaps some of you are closer than others.
Some of you are closer than others. This indicates that there are likely other Spartan-IVs who are more Spartan-like. Thorn is likely amongst them, as is Locke, Buck, and Vale. I think the issue is that the first experience we have of Spartan-IVs is that of Sarah Palmer, an outwardly unliked character from Halo 4, immediately disrespecting the Master Chief, the Spartan we have played as for the past 11 years at the time of Halo 4's release. The next single big insight we get of the Spartan-IVs is in Spartan Ops, and the first experience we have of them is following the escapades of Fire Team Majestic, who, aside from Thorn and perhaps Grant, seem too loud, too unprofessional, too much of a liability. They seem to have an inferiority complex in the presence of real Spartans. They talk of their sexual congress with civilians. They spend large amounts of time in the battlefield with their helmets off. And there's a few reasons this demonstrates that Spartan-IVs are a liability. First, having their helmets off limits the amount of power and speed Mjolnir Gen 2 can output, as we see with Thorn when he struggles to engage in hand-to-hand combat with an elite, and to lift a large boulder when a fully armoured Spartan can flip a Warthog that weighs well over 3 tons and outmaneuver an elite effortlessly. Second, having the helmet off makes them more vulnerable. If there are enemies nearby and one of them gets tagged and taken down, the other Spartans are now a man down and have to fight that way going forward, as well as decide whether to retrieve the body, which will inevitably take at least one or perhaps two more Spartans out of action as they carry the body, or to leave the body and thus either leave advanced human technology in the hands of their enemy, or activate the fusion self-destruct sequence, which again takes the Spartans out of the fight and forces the fireteam to remain in the enemy's sights while the task is performed. The very act of removing their helmets in a combat zone demonstrates their complete disregard of themselves and their squad mates, which is something you'd never even so much as question with any of the earlier Spartans. So even the games themselves present the Spartan force to be cheap knockoffs, budget super soldiers. To quote Dilios from 300, more brawlers than warriors. They make a wondrous mess of things. Brave amateurs. They do their part. When the game that debuts the Spartan-IVs even berates them when weighing up against the Spartan-IIs and IIIs, and they are presented to the player as disrespectful and unprofessional, it is hardly surprising that for all of the bonuses and superior variables of the Spartan-IVs, they still have a reputation of not being very good Spartans. For me, the major issue I have is based in the nomenclature. The very fact that they are called Spartans. The Spartans of ancient Greece were arguably amongst the greatest warriors on Earth at that stage. At a young age, generally between 6 and 7, children were sent on agoge, which trained these children to be warriors, loyal to the state, and of good moral fibre. It is because of these ancient origins that the Spartan-IIs were called Spartans, because they were kidnapped at the age of 6, trained to be warriors, loyal to the UNSC, and fight for Earth and all of her colonies. This rhetoric was mimicked for the Spartan-IIIs. The Spartan-IVs, however, were enlisted voluntarily as fully grown and consenting adults. They were trained to be Spartans. Their loyalty to the UNSC was assumed due to their pre-existing service and deep background checks, and thus expected to rise to the same position of honour and motivations as the earlier classes. This is a completely different method of cultivating warriors than the previous classes, and the ancient origins of the name Spartan. The differences in the respective methods, I think, necessitates a completely different name, because they only fit the name Spartan in that the innovations and reputation of the earlier classes were used as a stepping stone for the fours. I have heard it argued that this is the way that normal soldiers are, which I absolutely don't object to, and that Spartan-IVs are simply normal soldiers with Spartan augmentations and Mjolnir armour. That's, again, I have no direct objection to. They are decent soldiers, but I don't believe, due to the difference in the methodologies I've previously said, and their altogether differences in honour, responsibility, expectation, service record, abilities, efficiency, and effectiveness, that they should be called Spartans. Find them a different name, and the main issue of mine is immediately redundant. They are not Spartans. Simple as that. Even Halsey spitballed a few names such as Titans, Argonauts, Olympians, Prometheans. Maybe call them Vanguards or Hoplites or Athenians or Laconians. Something equally historically charged but independent of the Spartans. Now, I admit the use of children as soldiers is, without a doubt, a massive ethical issue, and at the very least is morally questionable, but given what the 2s and 3s achieved, within reason, I think the ends justify the means, as the level of desperation for intervention was at fever pitch, and desperate times called for desperate measures. So in that respect, the Spartan 1s and the Spartan 4s are indeed more morally acceptable. An argument could be made that making Spartan grade augmentations more openly available to larger quantities of humans is ultimately beneficial for humanity at large in a galaxy currently plagued by conflict and war. But as I've previously stated, when the very debut of the 4s represents them to the viewer as disrespectful, sarcastic, second-rate and cheap knockoffs, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the player would perceive them as such. I feel it necessary now to say that I in no way, shape or form dislike the Spartan-IVs, with the exception of my issues with the nomenclature, in that they shouldn't be called Spartans, but perhaps something else entirely. I do not dislike the Spartan-IVs. I think it's more poignant to say, and I feel like I'm talking for the vast majority of people who take issue with the 4s, that it's not the Spartan-IVs I dislike, but the individuals who have thus far portrayed them. In particular, at least 3 of the 5 members of Majestic, Sarah Palmer, and a couple of members of Fireteam Osiris. DeMarco and Madsen don't act like Spartans, or carry themselves like Spartans, and certainly don't appear very Spartan-like to me. They more appropriately fit into what I would expect ODSTs to be like amongst themselves. Sarah Palmer just seems to be constantly salty. The resting bitch face doesn't help her much, and I sometimes wonder perhaps all she needs to lighten her up is a damn good fuck. When you use outwardly unlikable, egotistical, unrelatable, or otherwise misunderstood characters to portray a new faction that you want people to respond positively to, don't be surprised when people don't respond the way you were hoping. I mean, come on, Locke was supposed to be the new character being pushed forward. He was more Spartan-like than Majestic, but with him, 343 went too far the other way. They obviously noticed Majestic wasn't much liked due to their clown-like portrayal, evidenced by the fact that, at least in the mainline lore, we haven't heard from them since. So they made Locke more stoic and Spartan-like, but went too far and gave him the depth of a spoon. They then tried to offset his lack of depth by adding in personality in a few places, but it either didn't match up with his established character, or he just straight up wasn't interesting or engaging. I mean, come on, there were so many opportunities with Buck to have a little likeable banter, but no, we get...
Buck, you buying for us a drink when we're done?
You ask, you buy.
You ask, you buy. Buck's response suggested it was something quick, witty and mildly funny. You ask, you buy is one-dimensional. It's not clever or witty, it's more of a vocal acknowledgement of a basic social etiquette. And when we finally learn that Osiris have been assigned to hunt Chief, the Master Chief, Spartan 117, the Halo guy, and we had an opportunity to really absorb and to get to grips with the gravity of the situation we have just been presented with, hunting the saviour of humanity, the fallen hero, the Master Chief, because he's gone AWOL and is ignoring orders, 343 went with...
Every other Spartan, every soldier, when they hear about this, they're gonna hate us. You know that, right?
You're not the only one here because of him.
You're not the only one here because of him. Then he turns around and walks off. He just walks off. No elaboration, no brief but penetrating look into Locke's motivations and his history, no relatable moment to get us on his side and get us in the mindset of Locke and feel his hesitation of having to hunt someone who, at least judging by that response, must have saved his life in a significant way at some point. Nope, he just turns around and walks off. Even Buck, hell, even Nathan Fillion's portrayal of Buck seemed dissatisfied and left in the dark by that response. I can guarantee there are loads of Spartan-IVs that are everything a Spartan should and could be. Hell, Buck is a pretty damn good example of what a Spartan should and could be. Buck should have been our first experience of a Spartan-IV. Not Palmer passively insulting the Chief due to an inferiority complex. Not a fire team of egotistical Spartans talking about getting their ends wet and promptly ignoring orders, breaking rank and putting their teammates at risk. We should have had the doors open, the Spartan-IVs professionally moving through to secure the area, and Lasky, flanked by Buck, walking up to greet Master Chief. While we're on the subject, I literally remembered this as I wrote this part of the script. The Spartan-IVs we see during Halo 4's campaign, the ones who clear the area on Chief's arrival, the ones who accompany Chief after Del Rio's lackluster mission brief, they act like Spartan-IVs should. They silently move past the Chief, ignoring the fact that he's the goddamn Master Chief, and instead focused on the task at hand for the security of all involved. A nameless fire team of what appeared to be recruit Spartan-IVs operated in a more Spartan fashion than anything we have seen of Fireteam Majestic. In fact, there's a clip to compare. This is the moment Majestic sees Chief for the first time. They're supposed to be training, likely testing the max speed of their unarmoured tech suits. Yet Chief walks on deck and Madsen damn near falls off of the treadmill in true gym idiot fashion. I'm not beating on Spartan-IVs as a whole, but the ones that 343 chose to represent this new generation of Spartans was such a poor choice that it is not surprising that many of the fan base have such a poor opinion of the Spartan-IVs. They have, I hope they still have, so much promise. And we've seen flickers of it in the portrayal of Buck, in the nameless fire teams accompanying Chief on the battlefield, in Thorne's mannerisms and subtleties around Halsey, in the moments in the books like New Blood and Bad Blood, and even some of the comic books. The Spartan-IVs have the potential to really earn the title of Spartan. I just hope that whatever 343 has planned for Infinite takes cue from these better examples, takes lessons and wisdom from the failings of the past, and in Infinite gives us the Spartan-IVs that they deserved to be from the get-go. Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons, so Tenchi the Silent Cartographer, Brian, Sebastian, Holden, Defiant Alpha 117, Nathan, Red Sea and Darian, the Holders of the Mantle, Ty, Black Biscuit, J Rabbit, Austin, Kaiser, Silux, Mist Legends and The Revanche, my Reclaimers, Zach, Deep Cover, Verbal Statue, Spesigo, Spartan A498, Guppy, Josh, Mickey, Bastion, Molshar and Slithery Tube Dude, my Metarchs, and all the other patrons that have jumped aboard to support the channel. You guys are awesome and all of this wouldn't be possible without you. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there. It would mean the world to me and would free up more of my time for me to put into this content and other Halo related goodness. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.